Okay, the next topic I want to talk about in policy is the property title system. I want to argue that our current property title system is too fragmented, and it would be better to be national, that it is too much paper-based and ought to be computer-based, and that it is needlessly uncertain and could be made more certain by something that's I've seen called the Torrens title system. Okay, so fragmented, when the title records are held in offices in counties, and so it's like they're sitting in file cabinets in county offices. And when, for example, with securitized mortgages, and people are trying to manage foreclosures from a central office, it's very difficult. And also, in some, servicing gets transferred, ownership gets transferred. We have this rapidly changing national market for home mortgages, for better or worse. I'll talk about next time, whether we should have this, securitized national market or not. But we do, and so you have these mortgages that the ownership can be traded instantly and can go, flashing across the country, around the world. And meanwhile, you've got these documents sitting in county offices that may or may not get updated properly. So we heard during the last crisis about the foreclosure mess, that the foreclosures weren't being handled properly. And all of that really had to do with this conflict between a very fragmented title system and a national mortgage system. So I think for a variety of reasons we ought to get away from the fragmented title system, have some kind of national computer database. Again, these things are paper-based. You can still have a property defined as, take 10 steps toward the river, make a right at the tree stump, whereas we now know that we can do geocoding. The same sort of things that enables your GPS to work, we can use to define properties. So we can define properties more precisely, make the records available on a computer, and get rid of these crazy paper files. And finally, the worst thing about our title system is how uncertain it is. Basically, there's something called a chain of title. So once upon a time, A owned the property, and then sold it to B, and then sold it to C, and then sold it to D, and now E wants to buy it. And so with our current title system, if E buys from D, and then later on somebody goes along and says, this transaction was bad, I had a lien on this property at this point, or this transaction wasn't handled legally, then poor E, who bought from D, can have to give the property back to somebody who was involved way back, 20 years ago in the process. But with a Torrens title, when E, as long as D has a proper title, you don't have to do a title search all the way back. If D has a title as of this point in time, then when E buys from the title, then E owns the property. And if somebody back here then comes in and says, I got messed up way back here and I'm going to sue, it becomes the title office, the people who've provided the Torrens title, who then have to deal with this person. But this person doesn't have any claim against E. He's got a claim against the people who issued the title, who made the mistake back here, or who, if you can't get them, maybe you have the people who gave the title to D. Um, but in any case, you want to hold the transactors D and E harmless. If D has a legitimate title, then that's it. You don't go back and say, well, because a transaction occurred 40 years ago wasn't right, E doesn't really have title to the property. So correcting that problem would get rid of the title search challenge. It would get rid of the title insurance, which is a big cost to consumers, and would also help facilitate getting out of this paper-based fragmented system into a national computer system. So title reform, although it would work against the interests of all the lawyers and title searchers and title insurance special interests, title reform would be a great thing for consumers.